Hello everyone, Joe here from H145 Rotor Sims, and today is exciting. We are going to do the H145 normal startup procedure in the ultimate home cockpit. We're going to be utilizing the HPG H145 checklist. This comes out of the documentation manual that is provided by HPG. And I have the checklist in front of me. I have printed it out, I laminated it, and I just want to point out two things. The first column on the left-hand side, these are actions we need to take. On the right-hand side, we have visual and audible notifications we are going to be looking for, with the exception of a few items like crew, payload, and fuel in the right-hand column. So just a quick tip on that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The first step is going to be to turn on the battery master switch to on and then engage. This is a two-step process. Up on the overhead panel to the leftmost side, we're going to move the switch to the on position. The test and progress screens are going to come up. Let's go ahead and now move the battery switch to the engage battery master. Now normally I wouldn't turn on the cockpit lights at this time just because we are on battery power, but for the sake of the video I am going to go ahead and turn on the lighting. Okay, what we're looking for is power up test okay. If you see this HOTAS mute here, this usually means because you left the switch in the position either in mute or in the standby. So we'll go up to the overhead panel. Once again, we will look for the audio panel and we will move this back to the normal position, which is in the center position. And in our message center, you can see that has cleared. Next, we are going to test the extinguishing system for bottles for engine 1 and 2, and there's two bottles 1 and 2. So we're going to move the test fire switch to the extinguish testing position, and then we're going to be looking for on the display in the message center fire bot 1 and 2 used. I'm sorry, that's actually going to be up here on the warning panel. So let's go ahead and move this switch to the test, which is the forwardmost position for number 1. We heard the audible tone. We have engine 1 fire, fire bot 1 and 2 test down here in the message center. On the warning panel, we have the fire bot 1 and 2 and extinguishing lights illuminated, so we are okay. Let's go ahead and move this switch on the overhead panel back to the off position. Let's wait for those lights to extinguish over here on the warning panel, and once they do, we will repeat the procedure. And here we go. So number 2. Fire engine 2, which we have up on the display. We also have our lights coming on here. Fire bot 1 and 2 tests. We are okay. Let's go ahead and turn that switch to the off position. Let's wait for the lights to extinguish. And we are okay there. Now we are going to move over to the lamp indicator test. So we're going to move back up to the overhead panel. Again, in the test section, we are going to turn this switch, which says lamp, to the lamp position, which is the forwardmost position. We heard the audio test. So we're going to start over at the warning panel. We can see that everything is illuminated here. Moving down to the engine control panel, the training button is now lit in green. The 6-pack, we have indication on our display that everything is lit up. On our autopilot control panel, our APCP is all our lighting indicators are on, as well as our audio panel. So let's go ahead and now move that switch to the off position. Now normally when you put that switch to the on position, just to note inside the simulator and in probably real life I would guess, is that the exit lights above the doors will also illuminate, so you would be looking around the cockpit to make sure that actually happens. Next, we're going to be looking for battery voltage to be greater than 23.5. So this is MFD number 2, this is MFD number 4, and this is the VMS page. For whatever reason you're not in the VMS page, let's say I'm in this map, I would hit the soft key up here at the top on the helionics where it says VMS, and this will bring us over to the VMS page. So what we need to do now is go over here to the right-hand side and click on number, and now we can actually see our battery voltage, which is 24.3 volts. And on our checklist, it says we need to be greater than 23.5, which we are. So we can now move on to VMS page, weight subformat. We adjust crew, payload, fuel as required. I have everything set up in pounds, imperial and all that. You're using probably kilograms if you are overseas or anywhere else besides the US. The thing to note is that 8,200 pounds we cannot exceed, and I believe that's 3,700 kilo, if I'm not mistaken. Also, I'm going to go over to my aircraft in my tablet. I'm going to go to crew and payload. It is just me today, so I'm going to get rid of these crew members and have myself here. And I'm going to go ahead and dial in my weight, which is 155 pounds. So on the VMS page, we're going to click the MFD button because we don't have any payload where it says crew. And I'm going to change this down to 155 pounds. I'm going to go ahead and click this button one more time. Now this is going to be our fuel. Now we can see our fuel here. Over here, 769 pounds, and we see 40% here. So if you change that value here or here, it will update accordingly. So let's go to 50%. And we see this change to 915 pounds, and just in a moment, this will also register as well. So let's go ahead and let's say if we dial this down to 885, we should see 47% fuel here, and this should also drop down to about 875 momentarily. And there it is. Okay, so once we have this dialed in, we're going to go ahead and click this button on the MFD, validate. So that's going to lock our numbers in. Next, we're going to go ahead and hit the previous button to go back to our weight and performance. Just want to make sure I don't miss anything here. So now, okay, now what we're looking for on MFD number 2 is we are looking inside the message list. We're looking for engine 1 and engine 2 fail, which we have. We're looking for aft and forward fuel pumps illuminated, which we have, and pitot 1 and 2 heat to the off position, which we have, and power up test okay. So the flight instruments and IESI, wait for alignment, everything is already aligned. And now we need to go ahead and set the barometric pressure. I understand you can probably use the quick shortcut. I think it's Control B to automatically set it in Flight Simulator. But let's say for the sake of this video in realism that we wanted to get the right barometric pressure. So in order to go ahead and change the barometric pressure, you would hit the baro soft key on the right hand side. It'll illuminate, which means that it's active. So now we can control this. Now the next thing to do is actually to listen to the automated terminal information system and hear what the barometric pressure is. So I'm going to look down at my GNS. I'm going to click on nearest for the airport, and of course it's going to be Meigs Field. That's where I'm at. And so this is going to pull up this page. I'm now going to go ahead and click the frequencies tab. And here I'm going to see my approach, my ATIS, my departure, and my ground. For this section, I want to click on ATIS, Automated Terminal Information System. This will pop this over into my standby row over here. I'm going to go ahead and click COM, and that's going to move us into the primary. And so we're not hearing anything yet, and that is because on my audio panel, VHF 1 is enabled. I need to move over to VHF number 2, so I'm going to go ahead and click VHF number 2. And we should hear ATC. Okay, so our barometric pressure is 29902. We're going to go ahead and click baro, which we've already done. We're going to lower this down to 29902. We're going to click baro one more time to make sure that is not active. We're going to move over to our standby instrument and also set our barometric pressure to 29902. Okay. Exit lights and anti-collisions as required. We're going to move back up to the overhead panel. We're going to go ahead and turn on our anti-collision lights. Next, we're going to do the engine start procedure. We're going to prime our fuel pumps. Let's move up to the overhead panel and turn on prime pumps 1 and 2 to the on position. One thing I forgot to do when I started this flight is I forgot to put these two in the off position. So in normal context, these will be in the off position. Let's go ahead and take a look at the date today, and it is October 6th, so it's an even day, so we'll start with engine number 2. If it was October 5th, we would start with engine number 1. So what we're going to do is move the engine position switch to the idle position on the engine control panel. What we're going to be looking for is N1 to increase. We see start up in the right-hand corner, and in the message we see starter engine 2. Hydraulic pressure should also start coming up over here on the VMS page. And as you can see, it is starting to rise. We are checking our TOT. And around 70% N1 or so, the start should go to idle. Okay, so we now have the idle position. Let's go ahead and move over to engine number 1 and place this to the idle position. Again, we are looking for N1. We're watching our TOT. We're waiting for start to go to idle, and we can see the engine 1 starter is engaged. After this is set, we're going to be looking up for start up test OK in our message center, which we do have. Okay, both engines are now sitting at idle. We're going to go ahead and now check our hydraulic pressure. We're going to move back over to the overhead panel, and up here you can see in our test indicating panel we have our system 1 and system 2 hydraulic. Let's move this over to system number 1. What's going to happen is you're going to see hydraulic pressure number 2 start to drop. We're going to see this on the message display. And then next what you need to do is you need to check control surfaces and make sure you have normal surfaces. Next, we're going to go ahead and move the hydraulic pressure over to system number 2. So we should see this hydraulic pressure on the right-hand side come up. This one on number 1 should drop. Hydraulic 2 in the message center should go out. And we see hydraulic number 1 TR shut off and low pressure. Okay. And hydraulic 2 should be disappearing any second, and it did. We would check our control surfaces for normal forces, which we have. Now let's go ahead and switch the hydraulic pressure to the off position. Now we're going to go ahead and complete the after engine start procedure. We're going to turn on the pitot-static heating for pilot and co-pilot to the on position. So looking up at the overhead panel, once again, we have our 2 switches right here. We're going to move these to the on position. Next, we're going to turn on the avionics master 1 and 2. That is also on the overhead panel here. We're going to turn that to the on position. So our secondary GNS is going to come up here, and then we're also going to move the standby battery to the on position. Next, we need to turn on our LAVCS, and we need to switch that over to PIL. That is located right here, and we're going to move this to the PIL condition. So the LVSC fail should go away, which it did. Next, we're going to transfer our fuel pumps. So we're going to turn off primer pump 1 and primer pump 2 and transfer pump 1 and transfer pump 2 to the on position. Exit lights, position and strobe. We're going to turn those on. Interior lights, we're going to arm the emergency exits, which we are now in the arm position. Cockpit ventilation, so our outside air temperature is 59 degrees, so we got bring in some heat inside the cockpit. Next, collective is in the full down position. Now normally in the real aircraft, from what I understand, there is a collective lock. So next we're going to take the test switch and move it to lamp once again. And now we're looking at to make sure our 6-pack is illuminated once again. We might as well check, make sure everything else is still lit up, which it is. Next, we're going to move the switch to pre-flight. And then we're going to see pre-flight test come up in the display, which we have now. And we're going to wait for that to say pre-flight test OK. Once that happens, we will move the switch to the off position. Pre-flight test OK. So let's move back up to the overhead, and we will go ahead and put this to the off position. Next, we need to enable our autopilot systems. So this is our autopilot control panel. Now let's go into the VMS page. We'll go into system, and here we can see what we have and what we don't have. So we don't have any control for our autopilots for pitch, roll, and yaw currently. So now what we need to do is go ahead and enable the backup, AP1 and AP2. And as we can see in the controls, or in this AFCS, we can see we now have the system working. We have 3 green boxes, and you can go ahead and set up or preset up what you want for now. For example, if I wanted to set up my my heading to be, whatever it is, let me move over to heading and VS. So this bug is now moving. So if I knew I was going to take off and head to 120, I would go ahead and get that set. I would also set my altimeter, and then when I press these buttons to engage it, it would go ahead and start acquiring these values that I have set. Now at this point, you'd be checking your beep trim. I don't have this enabled yet. I'm still waiting for my motorized force feedback cyclic, and then we will go ahead and do that. If you're flying, if you have the action pack and you have the HEMS version, you will have emergency floats. And also, I believe the hoist, which I have spots for switches here. I'm going to implement those, but you would set those as required. Now, at this point, we would go ahead and set our engines to 1 and 2 to the flight position. Let's go ahead and go back to the previous page on our VMS. We have idle. Let's go ahead and move engine number 2 to the flight position and close this guard and gate this switch. Okay, we can see we're in a normal. And let's go ahead and move the second one, engine 1, to flight, and go ahead and gate this switch. Okay, now you can see we have a message here in this particular area on the left-hand side. That just means on the GNS here in the message that we have no arrival airport set. So if we go ahead and click these, that will extinguish out of there. We'll make sure everything is centered out here. And now our message center is clear. That concludes our video today, and if you've liked this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon. Please feel free to leave comments in the comment section below, and I'd be happy to answer them on future videos or anything you think we should make videos about this wonderful aircraft. Thanks again so much for watching, and have an awesome day.